Sometimes there are moments in life when you become a witness to the skills of other people, to which it is even hard to believe. For example, someone can carry things on a bike in a cart that exceed the weight of the person 2 or 3 times. Or, for example, you see that someone can shoot a bow with their feet, and at the same time hits the target. In such cases, thoughts like how is this even possible? Or it's amazing how in general, you cannot admire it or something similar arise in your head. Our main character was the complete opposite of such people. No one noticed him, no matter what he did, and he was very tired of it. But one day, as it happens, in one room similar to a warehouse, he found an unusual book in a white binding and with a strange symbol of a network of patina painted in black and yellow stripes. His life has completely changed thanks to this book. The book was unusual. When he read it, then everything he read happened to him. He could write down his experience in a book, and anything would become a miracle. Our hero was a guy with dark blue short hair and the same color eyes, and he was chosen as the new author of the Book of Experience. The guy worked in a diner, although this place was a little hard for him, but nevertheless he liked this place. A beautiful young girl with red hair worked there. She cooked delicious food for elementary school students. In general, the cafe could receive a small income thanks to elementary school students, but of course the income was meager, which caused the cafe to suffer. And then one of the simple days, a guy with a short black hairstyle, as usual, was sleeping at one of the tables. By the way, the cafe itself was empty now. The red-haired girl slapped the sleeping guy on the back and said that he was drinking here again, and could not deny it, because she had just caught him red-handed. At this time, RGG, Jung Seok, a 19-year-old guy, was opening some paper, namely receipts for expenses and debts. Recently, their income has become quite small and only expenses and debts could be seen in the checks. Seeing this, Jung Seok thought that it would be best for him to join the army after school. Jung Seok prepared everything for a trip to the bookstore. But during the exit, a red-haired girl shouted at him that he was going to the bookstore again. And that sleeping guy said it was a bookstore. But the redhead snorted and replied that now was not the time to read books. The guy himself would never give up the idea of reading books, because this is one of the cheap pleasures. Walking down the street, where a fresh breeze was blowing and blowing his hair, he looked at his feet, thinking about his own. At that time, he met his classmates, namely a red-haired girl with the same eye color, in a school uniform, a guy with yellow hair that shone like gold under the rays of the sun and combed back, a simple guy with brown hair, a plain girl with black hair and glasses, and a fat boy with a kind smile and black hair and black eyes. A red-haired girl saw Jung Seok, immediately ran to him and said they were now heading to Sam to study English, and brown hair shouted that they wanted to eat somewhere after school. Jung Seok said he was heading to the bookstore, and hearing his chestnut hair exclaimed in surprise that he couldn't believe that someone was continuing to go to the library. And the fat guy asked the guy why he keeps using books if he can use the internet and read all the books there. The yellow-haired one said not to touch the kid, because he was doing everything right, but for some reason he had a dissatisfied expression on his face. He and the others passed by while the redhead was saying goodbye to Jung Seok, and then followed them. Jung Seok was bad at a lot, and the only thing that pleased him was reading books in a bookstore. Entering it, he greeted an old man with glasses who was reading a newspaper, and he greeted him in response and said that the guy came early today. Jung Seok asked if there were any new books, and the old man replied that they were inside. Let the guy sort them out in order. Jung Seok went into the library and found bags of books. It was one of the most beautiful moments in his life. He didn't know what was inside, so when he opened this bag, he felt like he was opening some kind of treasure chest. But of course sometimes there is nothing new in the chest, and today it seems there was such a case. Although, after looking more closely, he found the book that we described at the beginning, white with a pattern of black and yellow cobweb. The guy took the book and seeing that he had no title opened it, but there was nothing inside. Everything was empty. But suddenly it lit up and there appeared an inscription asking him if he wanted to write his experience in the Book of Experience. Looking at the inscription in surprise, he wondered if he had any experience at all. Then, after thinking about it, he decided to write something in a book for the sake of experiment. And immediately there was an inscription saying that he had become the new owner of the Book of Experience. After Jung Seok became the new author of the Book of Experiments, he wanted to test what the book is capable of. But to do this, he had to write his experience, and to write an experience, he had to remember something, and in general he didn't know what to write yet, so he decided to go to a secluded place. He had one such place, in the mountain, and now he was climbing it. There were a lot of thoughts, and also no one could interfere, not to mention that if you concentrate, you can also remember moments of your life here. Jung Seok was wearing an orange hoodie and comfortable gray jeans, and carried a backpack on his back. Looking around for a place to sit down, he remembered the bright light that flashed after he wrote something on the book, as well as the inscription on the book that asked him if he wanted to write down his experience. Climbing the laid ladder up the mountain, he then passed the rocky terrain where the ladder ended, and then almost fell when the stone on which he stepped slipped. Screaming in pain and sliding down, he still did not lose himself and grabbed the first root from some tree sticking out of the ground. A little more and he would have flown into the cliff that appeared before his eyes. With a sigh of relief, he began to climb back up. Some time later, he finally reached the place where he had a view of the hills and mountains filled with greenery and life, as well as the city, which could be seen from here quite small. After looking at all this beauty for a few minutes, Jung Seok sat down and opened his backpack and took out a book and a pen. Putting the book on the stone and opening the right page, he looked again at the inscription asking him if he wanted to write down his experience in the Book of Experience. After scrolling through this line in his head several times, he took a pen and wrote on the book the question of how to record the experience. The blank page lit up white, which surprised the guy, but then an explanation appeared in the place of the glow saying that when a guy writes down his experience, he turns into experience points. Of course, Jung Seok became interested in what kind of experience points and how to use them, and therefore he wrote a question on the book how he can use experience points. The book in response sent him a message that when he would record his actions, he would get points. Looking at the answer, Jung Seok wondered if the book had other experienced owners. But then he wrote on the book that the experience he gets gives him the opportunity to do some things. In response, having received yes, he wrote down his question again, saying that all the experience that he gets affects him only positively. Of course, the book replied that yes. What kind of experience did Jung Seok want to gain? Thinking about it, he remembered his coffee shop, where there are almost no people, except of course 2 employees. Then he asked writing in the book if the book has a recipe for tteokbokki. The book replied that he had the experience to work with food. Then the guy asked what about tteokbokki and the book said that he didn't have that. And then another recording came out telling him to write down his wishes. The guy finally decided to try out the book and wrote about today's experience. Today he found a copy of this book in a bookstore and wrote down his experiences in it. The book for his record gave him 25 experience points. Seeing this, the guy exclaimed in surprise that it was too easy, and then raising his head and closing his eyes, he began to remember one of the cold days he had experienced. That day it was especially cold outside, because the guy put on a yellow jacket and scarf. On the way, he met a homeless man in light clothes and with a beer on his hand lying on the ground. The homeless man was snoring, but he was curled up like an embryo, probably because of the cold. The smell from him was terrible and Jung Seok just couldn't help but cover his nose with his hand. Then after thinking about it, he decided to call 119, because if you fall asleep in this weather, you can freeze to death. The ambulance is most likely to dress up later than usual, because it was icy expensive, so the guy decided to give his jacket to a homeless man. The homeless man woke up and thanked him, and Jung Seok told him that an ambulance would come soon, but in the meantime the man should cheer up. He also tied his scarf so that he wouldn't die for sure. Deciding that this was a great experience, the guy wrote about it in his diary and received 25 experience points for it. The book said that these glasses were for the fact that he wrote his experience of saving a person. Smiling, Jung Seok decided that he had figured out the basics and decided that this was just the beginning. He decided to write a more complicated story. He wrote about another incident recalling that day. It was another simple day and a huge truck was rushing on the road at all stages. When Jung Seok turned around, he saw that an old man was walking on a pedestrian. Seeing the truck rushing straight towards the pedestrian and realizing that the old man was in danger, Jung Seok screamed with all his might. A truck was racing on the road, and an old man was walking on a pedestrian. Jung Seok shouted calling the old man Mr. and he just turned to look at the truck and then Jung Seok jumped towards the old man and dragged him with him to the other side of the truck. They both fell to the ground, and the truck was able to brake only after a pedestrian had passed. The worried Jung Seok then asked the old man in a green cap and the same color of sportswear if he was okay, and the old man, sweating all over, thanked the guy. Jung Seok breathed a sigh of relief while the old man asked for his forgiveness. His hearing had deteriorated recently. Jung Seok, smiling, asked the old man to look at the traffic light next time before crossing the road. After writing all this experience, the book wrote to him in response that he received 1,500 experience points for saving a life. Seeing that this time they gave less experience, Jung Seok realized that even if this is a unique case, if the experience is similar, less experience points will be given. After thinking for a while, he looked at the pigeons sitting not far away. What kind of experience does he want to get? The galubas were walking just a couple of dozen centimeters away from him, and therefore, smiling, the guy took out the chocolate and broke it a little, crumbled it, and fell asleep in front of the birds. Looking at how peacefully these pigeons were eating chocolate crumbs, he began to recall a recent conversation with Rodney. When he returned from the library and went to his room, he heard voices in the corridor, coming from another room. He stopped and listened. One of the voices was saying that if things continued like this, they said they would take the mortgage payment for the house. The voice asked to sort it out, because working at such a pace they will only lose money, not earn. Besides, they still had to send their Jung Seok to college. With this in mind, he first decided to save the restaurant. Getting up from his seat, he went home, and in the evening, when everyone fell asleep, he opened his book again in his desktop. Taking a pen in his hands, he wrote that he wanted to become a good cook. In response, they wrote to him that the basis of cooking is in taste. Salty, sweet, spicy, sour, and bitter, 5 types of taste. After that, the book asked him if he would use experience points, and the guy of course agreed and fell asleep. He woke up because of a scream telling him that he would be late. The voice told him that he had already prepared breakfast for him, so he should quickly go down and eat and then go to school. Massaging his aching head, the guy wanted to get up, but suddenly an itchy pain seized his arm. Frowning and clenching his teeth, the guy looked at the experience book, where there were congratulations that he had earned 200 points of culinary experience. He got a super taste. He got a mordant and he got a knife master. He felt after reading the book after his request. In his dream, he gained the experience of the chefs he had read about. Getting up from his seat, he went down and went to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator and found there a container with tteokbokki sauce. After trying it, he sadly said that it was a failure. The black-haired man looked at him, not understanding what he was saying, and the guy himself thought that this had become the norm. The sauce had a very weak taste of sharpness and sweetness. He immediately took ketchup and mayonnaise and expertly added them to the sauce, and then began chopping radish, himself surprised at the skill of his hands. He cut as fast as they show in programs or films about chefs. And when he also began to thinly slice the sliced round radishes, he looked at what was happening with bulging eyes. Of course, the black-haired man was as surprised as he was. A girl with brown hair ran towards the kitchen after hearing a scream, and shouted at two guys, asking what they were doing with the sauce they wanted to sell. Jung Seok gave a spoon to the girl and asked her to try it. After tasting the sauce, the girl looked at Jung Seok in surprise, saying that it was amazing. While the girl and the black-haired guy were wondering about the delicious sauce, Jung Seok said that he was going to school. At lunchtime, there were a huge number of children in front of the diner, shouting to be given spicy rice cakes. The black-haired guy and the brown-haired girl had a lot to do. In the evening of that day, these two, having counted the nails, happily said that they had earned $350. With such a bet, they could even get rich. The guy said it was a shame that they had so few ingredients, and the girl exclaimed that the spicy rice cakes were very good. Jung Seok listened to his relatives with a satisfied face and thought that his culinary skills had reached a completely different level. It didn't make any sense at all. Putting his hand on the book, he thought about writing to him next. Maybe studying, or acquaintance, or is it better to train anyway? Which of these three will help him the most? Jung Seok, asking if any learning experience was available, wrote about it in a book, and the book asked him what type of learning experience he wanted. And Jung Seok wrote it down, and immediately he wanted to sleep, and in a dream he found himself in some strange space. 5 shurikens were flying towards Jung Seok. The guy smoothly raised one hand up and one hand down, thought about manipulating the air, and a gust of wind pushed all 5 shurikens flying at him. Behind the shurikens appeared some people similar to the bandits of the time of Murim. And in general, Jung Seok himself was also dressed in clothes from the time of Murim. 2 bandits attacked the guy, and one of them, a black-haired bandit, swung his saber vertically, but Jung Seok easily dodged the sword, and then with a blow of his hand to the center of the saber broke his blade on the floors. After that, a horizontal blow from another bandit, already with white hair and wearing a white cape, immediately followed, but Jung Seok only bent down a little, dodging this blow, and during the ascent hit the bandit right in the jaw. After making a circle, the guy sent 2 bandits flying with a blow of his palm, and Jung Seok himself wondered where he was. The boy was awakened from his sleep by his mother's voice calling him. She said he would be late for school, so he should hurry up. Jung Seok himself was surprised and couldn't believe that it was all a dream. He had never seen such a vivid dream. He fell asleep reading a book. Looking at the book, it was written that in Chinese training sounds like kung fu, and then it was written that he mastered martial arts by helping Mudang Group. It was the first time Jung Seok heard about the fact that training is kung fu. Now he understood why he had that dream where he was doing kung fu. A voice shouted at him to go down faster. He died there or something, and Jung Seok decided to take a shower and go down faster, otherwise he would still get from his parents. After the shower, he looked in the mirror and was surprised to notice that his body had become embossed. Why? He had 6 cubes. The muscles bulged very harmoniously. Was it because of dreams? When he dreamed that he became a chef, then his culinary abilities improved, and after a dream where he was a student, his body also changed. Jung Seok wondered if he should sleep in order to gain experience. But then after thinking a little, he decided that he gets experience by reading a book, and in order to adapt to what he read, he needs sleep. Going to school, he thought about the book of experience, which gave him answers to his questions about experience. But no matter how much the guy asks, the book does not tell how to be his master. Manipulating the air in his dream was an ability of the Mudang Group. Stopping and raising his hands, he asked himself, has he become stronger? There was a soda can lying on the road, and kicking it, the can flew up, and when it went down, Jung Seok jumped and hit the can like a football. The jar flew twisted and fell right into the trash can, which was a few meters away from the guy. Seeing this, Jung Seok involuntarily thought that he should try football. But at the same time, he felt someone behind him and quickly turned around and dodged, causing the guy who attacked him to fall to the ground. Looking at the guy with black hair with a hint of brown, big eyes and a square jaw, Jung Seok recognized him as Jung. Jung stood up in anger, saying that he was in pain and that his nose was bleeding. Then he turned towards the guy and asked him in a rage why he dodged him. Jung Seok, smiling stupidly, asked in response if Jung had attacked him first. Jung, wiping the blood with his hand, said that Jung Seok has good reflexes, but how could he dodge it? Jung Seok himself was also wondering about it. Looks like he really got stronger. Lunch came, and with it the time for lunch. Someone at school shouted that it was finally lunchtime, and another said that he was sleeping all the time anyway. Jung called Jung Seok for lunch and he told him to wait a minute, rummaged in his bag and took out 3 bottles. Pepper, salt and sugar. Jung asked in bewilderment why he needed them, and Jung Seok told him that he knew that their lunch was not very tasty. Jung said that lunch seemed to be quite normal, and Jung Seok, smiling, said that he also thought so. They went into the dining room and Jung, happily surprised, shouted that today they were serving stew of spicy pork and kimchi. Isn't that cool? Jung Seok looked at the food and thought that he usually liked this food, but now, here only the pork had a normal taste, at least it was edible. And then looking at his thoughts, he thought that his perception of taste had changed a lot. Sighing, he thought that this lunch should not be as delicious as before, and now he understood it. When they were looking for a place, her friend called him to sit here. It was that brown-haired girl with pronounced emotions. Jung agreed instead of the guy and called in Jung Seok. Jung Seok looked at the smiling girl with green eyes, and then at the irritated golden-haired guy and sighed and sat down. Jung, admiring the food, ate eating with both cheeks. The golden-haired man got up from his seat, and that girl with brown hair asked why he got up. And Seok, that was the name of the golden-haired guy, said that he didn't want to eat. Jung asked if he could give his portion to him, but Seok said not to touch his food. Jung Seok looked at the departing Seok with bewilderment, and meanwhile, the green-eyed girl told him not to worry. Jung Seok tasted the food and thought that, as expected, the food was not very good. Taking a little salt, he poured it on his hand and then began to crumble it, and then sprinkle it on the dish. Jung asked him why he crushed the salt and Jung Seok said that it would have melted by itself, but the food would have cooled down during this time. Then Jung Seok sprinkled a little pepper. One of the guys, or rather a skinny guy from their company, asked him why he was spoiling the food, because lunch is so delicious. Another guy, a fat man, eating a lynx, said that quantity over quality. Jung asked a friend to give him a taste, and when he ate the pork, he screamed with pleasure, saying that it was excellent. Because of his harsh cry, the others almost spat out food from behind their mouths. Jung, getting up from his seat, shouted at Jung Seok that he had added all the salt and pepper, but the taste had changed so much. Jung Seok, calmly eating his food, said that if the food is not delicious, then it's about seasonings. All he did was increase the salinity and sharpness. Jung asked in surprise that this was all he needed to change the taste. Jung Seok said that the difference between pouring out a glass of water and not pouring out. Jung asked what it was and Jung Seok smilingly said it was just 1 drop of water. Jung still didn't understand, looked at his friend, and Jung Seok said that all he did was add just 1 drop of flavor. And at this time, the green-eyed woman handed him a tray with her food, asking him to do the same for her. Near the school, Seok met with Sunbi from the karate club. Som had a white uniform and a black belt characteristic of this club. Song had a short cropped head and looked at his hube with doubt because Seok asked him for something that he usually didn't want to do. Chol, sitting on a bench, looked up and asked his Som if he understood what he was talking about. Som was still doubtful, so the golden-haired man said that everything would be fine even if he refused. He was not going to force him. But these words did not calm Som at all. At this time, a black-haired girl with glasses from their group called Seok, running to him. The guy told his Som that he could go and began to listen to the girl. The black-haired girl told him that Jung Seok was driving everyone crazy because he was seasoning food in the cafeteria and that made the food taste several degrees tastier. She also said that the first person he approached was Yoon Jae, that is, that green-eyed girl. Seok, ignoring her words, asked what she came here for. The girl looked at him blankly and the guy continued, saying that she should have enjoyed lunch with all of them. The girl stuttered a little, said she would like to eat with him, and the guy got up from his seat and asked why she thought he would have lunch with her. The girl said she just wanted to be with him. And the guy frowned and said that this is what makes him lose his appetite. The next lesson was physical education, and the guys were indignant about it. All due to the fact that in this school during physical education guys learned judo, and girls also basketball. They were controlled during judo. There's Som, and the most creepy of them was Cho Hyun, a muscular guy with black hair pulled up. Now he was looking at Jung Seok and remembering the words of his hube. Seok asked him if he was going to an elite judo college. Then he told him that most likely he would not be able to get into such a college with the current skills. But Seok could help him. His father was the college chairman Sunbi, and he was very respected. Of course, Cho Hyun couldn't remain indifferent after this, so he was going to do as Seok said. He shouted at Jung Seok Lee that he had the wrong stance. But the guy said that what was he talking about, because his stance was correct. Cho Hyun shouted at him to come out to him, and did not be impertinent. Jung Seok, not understanding what was going on, came forward while the others were discussing this event. The whisper of course quickly reached the girls, and Yoon Jae also found out about it. Cho Hyun, looking at Jung Seok, told him to get ready for sparring. Jung, looking at this situation, thought that Jung Seok would have a hard time. And Cho Hyun remembered his hube's request, or rather that Cho Hyun should destroy Jung Seok so that he could not walk with his head up in school. Clicking, Cho Hyun grabbed the form of Jung Seok and said that he was not going to tolerate such a trifle as Jung Seok in his gym, and after making a grab threw him to the ground. Yoon-jae looked at it with excitement. Soo-chul was grinning quite. But unfortunately, right before they collided with the ground, Jung Seok twisted and hit his ankle on Sam's head, exposing his back. Not his head, for one thing. Cho Hyun was surprised by this in earnest. How in general did this guy manage to turn his body around and fall on his back? Was it a random happy accident? While Cho Hyun was guessing, Jung Seok himself got up, sat down and turned to him and said that it was not fair. Of course, Jung Seok was supported by his classmates, saying that he was right and it wasn't fair, but one shout from Cho Hyun was enough to silence them all. Jung Seok stood up and asked to fight him again, which made Cho Hyun frown, but his classmates spread the atmosphere saying that they should fight again. Cho Hyun didn't understand where this guy's confidence came from. Yoon-jae, hearing the guy's words, asked him not to do it, and Soo-chul, seeing Yoon-jae's attitude, frowned harder. Of course, the other girls, seeing Yoon-jae's behavior, looked at her with incomprehension, asking her if she was worried about Jung Seok. Hyun took a stand and said that he would accept the challenge, let the guy go to him. Jung Seok, looking at the whole situation, found it strange because he did not feel that he would lose. Cho Hyun shouted that he would come for him, moved towards him with a jerk and grabbed him by the collar and wanted to carry him to the ground, which made Yoon-jae even more worried, and Soo-chul, who was expecting this, smiled. But Jung Seok did not lose vigilance and with difficulty, but was able to grab Song by the collar and picking it up, he threw it right on the floor. Cho Hyun bumped his head and never got up. Of course, this surprised everyone and everyone started talking in disbelief at what had just happened, asking each other about what he had done. And the girls all broke out saying that Jung Seok is cool. Yoon-jae was surprised, but Soo-chul was surprised, but at the same time angry. Jung Seok himself, sighing with difficulty, thought that he had used air manipulation on an instinctive level. But Cho Hyun was surprised at his loss, and therefore he asked for another round. Jung Seok wanted to continue, because he was sure that he would win, but then they were stopped by Soo-chul. Cho Hyun looked at the golden-haired guy with a pale face, and he told him again to stop. Soo-chul saw his son trembling from shock and barely standing. Of course he did not want Jung Seok to win again, thereby showing that it was not luck, but his skills. It would have made the guy the star of the school. After school, when Yoon-jae was walking home, she saw Soo-chul, who seemed to be waiting for her. Soo-chul told her that he would like to talk to her and Yoon-jae asked what he wanted to talk about. Soo-chul asked how she felt about him and Yoon-jae. Not understanding what was going on, said that of course they were just friends. Soo-chul said he wanted more and the girl got into a stupor. The girl took a step back and told Soo-chul to stop joking like that. But the guy insisted that he was not joking and took a step forward and said that he did not want to interfere and wanted to see what would happen, but he did not like that Yoon-jae began to get closer to Jung Seok. Yoon-jae said that both Soo-chul and Jung Seok, her friends and both her classmates. So why does Soo-chul think so? Soo-chul looking down said that because he chose her and because she is his woman, and she can't communicate with others. He said the last part with pressure approaching the girl's face, which of course scared Yoon-jae and she moved back and asked the golden-haired guy to stop being like that, because she might get angry. Soo-chul chuckled at her words and this infuriated the girl, and she screamed at him, asking why she couldn't get mad at him. He thinks that since he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and considers himself a handsome, intelligent and serious schoolboy, then she will not be able to tell him anything. It's the other girls going crazy over him. Soo-chul asked her, what about her? She doesn't like him. And Yoon-jae said that she didn't like him. The girl with a serious face said that she didn't like his excessive possessiveness. He didn't even have a drop of attentiveness, which is why he made many girls cry. She has no desire to become his property. Having said that, she turned and began to walk, saying, finally, that she would not become one of them. Soo-chul chuckled to himself and thought that why would she leave? Because he would never let the woman he chose leave him. Jung Seok's mom was standing in the diner, and she saw Yoon-jae and called her over, saying what she was doing there. Judging by her uniform, she was from the same school as Jung Seok. Bowing 90 degrees. The girl greeted the woman and said that she was a classmate of Jung Seok, and in the end addressed her as a mother. Chuckling, Jung Seok's mother asked why she called her mother and Yoon-jae blushed deeply. Seeing this, the woman laughed and said that although it doesn't sound bad. The woman's husband, grinning, approached his wife and said that their son didn't look like him. The woman screamed at her husband and told him to go peel potatoes. Yoon-jae also asked if Jung Seok was at home, and the woman said that most likely Jung Seok was in the library right now. The girl nodded regretfully, and the woman told her to go inside. Everything is exactly right. Jung Seok should be coming soon, so she can wait for him eating rice cakes. At that time, Jung Seok was actually in the library reading books. Looking at the old books, he was surprised that there were such books here. The book he chose was the Diary of the Wang Family, Mottos and Sayings of the Wang Family. It was written there that the Diary of the Wang Family was written thanks to the sayings and mottos of the Wang family. And the book said that if someone is in a higher position, then he should look after those who are below him and those who are in a low position should focus only on the goal. The post did not create a person, but a person created a place. Those who changed because of the change of rank, such people are called small-hearted people. On the other hand, those who do their work honestly, no matter how hard or easy it is, are called noble people. Goals can be achieved not only in one way, but at least 10. And so he was reading this book and suddenly a librarian passing by asked him if he understood what was written there. The guy, not understanding, tilted his head and said yes questioningly. The old man said that he meant that the book in the young man's hand was written in Chinese. Surprised by this discovery, he involuntarily shouted that it was because of the book of experience. And the old man, not understanding, asked what he was talking about and he said that nothing. And then he looked at the book again. He could easily read this diary of the Wang family. He understood not only the symbols, but also the meaning of what he read. It looks like this is a learning experience from Manga. For him, reading Chinese characters should be easier than ever. Thanks to his experience in Chinese, and can read Chinese characters fluently. If he can read and write Chinese, doesn't that mean he can also speak it? He tried to think in Chinese about the words he could say in English, but a minute has passed and he still can't come up with anything concrete. It looks like he needs some kind of trigger to make it work. When he went into the diner, he saw Yun-Jai who was washing tables in an apron. Surprised, he tilted his head and then looked at his parents. His mother immediately told him not to misunderstand. It was Yun-Jai herself who insisted that she wanted to help, and his father, smiling, said that they did not use her or something like that. Jung Seok looked at his girlfriend and asked what she was doing here, if she wanted rice cakes. Yun-Jai, embarrassed, said she'd better go and thank the guy's parents for letting her stay here. Those smiling told her to be careful on the way home, and that she was careful. When the girl came out of the door, Jung Seok, without understanding, asked why she was here, and his father told him that the guy was an idiot. He seriously thought that she had come here to eat spicy rice smitten. The guy, still not understanding, looked at his father and he, irritated by the stupidity of his son, shouted that it was because of him that she came. The guy, still not catching up, asked why. Her father said it was because she liked Jung Seok. His son should be more attentive to the feelings of women. Then the father added, approaching the guy, that personality should be more important than appearance, and Jung Seok should always remember this. Having lowered a stingy man's tear, the guy's father said that he fell in love with his mother's face, and that's what it led to. Because of his words, the father immediately got a frying pan in his face and the guy's mother shouted at him so that if he wants to teach him, then let him teach him correctly. Yun-Jai, walking home at sunset, was still embarrassed, thinking that in the end she didn't say anything, but even so, she felt happy. At night, in his room, Jung Seok thought about the improvements that had happened to him. He had already seen the effect of physical improvement, but he could not understand what scientific analysis gives. Sitting at the table, he looked at the book of experience and remembered today, especially the time of the lesson, and analyzing with the previous days, he still came to the conclusion that nothing had changed. At least he didn't see any difference. It seems that complex topics also did not become easier for him. If physical improvements affected his body, then scientific analysis must have had some effect on his learning abilities. It seems to be the same as physical improvement. Super taste and knife master is one of the types of experience he received, but if compared with games, then maybe it's similar with passive skills. The results from the super taste and the master of the knife were obvious, because on the same day his taste buds sharpened, and the use of the knife reached a completely new level. But as for scientific analysis, he could not understand what it was intended for. Fumbling in his backpack, he took out one of the notebooks and wondered how to activate this effect from scientific analysis. Opening the notebook, he told himself that maybe if he heard something, he would be able to learn it the first time. But suddenly something dawned in his head when he looked at a mathematical problem that had more letters than numbers. He immediately began to solve it and after a couple of minutes he succeeded. Looking at the answers to the task with surprise, he did not believe that he could really solve it. At first glance, it was clear that this was a difficult task, but somehow he was able to solve it. Maybe this is just the action of his skill. Exactly. Scientific analysis allows him to analyze and understand what he taught and not forget it. Inspired by his discovery, he began to write down one of the tasks that he had recently solved, but after scratching his head, he sighed. He couldn't solve this problem. Why is that? Maybe it's because he didn't pass the topic. It turns out it won't work with topics he hasn't studied before. After opening the book, he began to read, but quickly realized that reading does not mean that he will fully understand the topic he has read. Therefore, Jung Seok decided to focus on repeating those from the very beginning. All the rules and examples that the teacher gives from the book. If he studies it, doesn't it mean that he can become the best student in school? Some time passed and then, tired, Jung Seok stretched. He was interested to see the reaction of his parents when he becomes the best student of the school. He was surprised that he studied so hard and diligently. Who would have known that studying can be interesting, especially when you understand everything the first time? He gratefully looked at the book of experiments and decided to write something. Opening it, he wrote down about the experience gained during lunch, about the experience of seasoning food for girls, also the experience gained during a judo lesson, and finally the case when Yun-Jai came to their restaurant. The book gave him 25 points for the usual judo experience, as well as another 25 points for the dating experience. Looking at the last line, he was confused because it wasn't a date at all. Suddenly, he remembered about the diary of the Wang family and decided to search for it on the internet via a smartphone. But there was no information about this book. This surprised the guy because he thought it was a famous book, but it looks like he was wrong. Then he wondered what would happen if he wrote about the fact that he took the Wang family diary from the library and now he can read Chinese characters. The experience book gave him 2,500 experience points, saying that he wrote about the experience of finding the diary of the noble Wang family. Surprised by the figure, he could not believe that the record about finding some kind of diary is comparable to the experience of saving a person. But how did he get 2,500 points just for finding the diary of the noble Wang family? Taking this book out of his backpack, he looked at its cover. Diary of the Noble Wang Family. Maybe it's because he thought that everything that was written there were good and right things. Although, why does he think so? At first, Jung Seok didn't know about Chinese characters, so what right did he have to judge what was written there? Shaking his head, he decided not to bother his head with it and went to bed. The very next morning he went to school. When he passed the girls in the hallway, they couldn't take their eyes off Jung Seok. The girls wondered how this guy became so attractive in one day. He looked completely different than before. Some even asked their friends if it was worth flirting with Jung Seok, but their friends grinned at them, saying that how could they do that after recently calling this guy a loser. Without listening to all this, the guy went into the classroom as there was a bang and confetti flew over his head. Jung greeted him with smiles from ear to ear and Jung Seok asked what was going on here and his friend, smiling, told him not to talk like Jung Seok didn't notice how the girls were staring at him when he came into class. After defeating the leader of the judo club, Cho Hyun, Jung Seok's rating rose to heroic. Jung Seok wanted to justify himself by saying that it was an accident. But Jung did not let him rush to hug him and shouting that he was glad that Jung Seok was his bro. At this time, a voice came from behind them, telling them to stop talking, and the angry Jung turned around and shouted about who said it. He saw Suchol studying, and he indifferently told him that he was studying, and they were interfering with him. Jung wanted to justify himself, but the golden-haired man just once again told him to shut up. Jung cursed inwardly, and Jung Seok looked at Suchol. The next couple was Izo. And as always, the students were not happy about this, saying that Izo should be taught to elementary classes, not them. Someone asked the whining guy if he wasn't just glad that they weren't studying anymore. That guy said he just didn't want to get his hands dirty, because then he would have to wash them. The teacher, with short hair styled to the right and glasses, asked everyone to calm down and asked if everyone had brought their things. Everyone said yes and the teacher asked them to draw any plant. Jung Seok thought about how to draw him. And after a while, when the teacher was passing by the students checking how they were coping, he saw that the guy had drawn something, and also signed it with Chinese characters. The surprised teacher watched Jung Seok draw something in a relaxed manner. Enlightenment of bamboo and its stem. It was said that the refinement of bamboo is the initiated disciple, and the bamboo stalk is the disciple's mind. The teacher, seeing this beauty, was sure that the drawing of the tree was also magnificent, but the most amazing thing was that he did not use a candle for writing. Unable to resist, he said that it was an outstanding calligraphy and asked Jung Seok where he learned it. The guy, raising his head and looking at the teacher, said that he learned from the book. The teacher, surprised by this, looked at the brush lying next to the calligraphy canvas and asked Jung Seok if he had painted only with this, and he answered in the affirmative. This surprised the teacher even more, because Jung Seok was able to write such a thing only with an ordinary brush. He could not miss such a talent, so he asked him to come to the ISO class after lunch. Not understanding why he did this, the guy asked again what he needed in the class of ISO, and the teacher confirmed it, saying that he should definitely come. At recess, while Jung and Jung Seok were walking to the dining room, Jung asked a friend why he was called to the ISO office. Maybe he drew something depraved. Jung Seok said that this was not the case, and Jung looked at the drawing and asked what it was, himself suggesting that it looked like a thermos. Jung Seok wanted to answer, but as soon as they entered the dining room, girls ran towards the guy with trays in their hands, asking him to season their food. They almost crushed the guys, which is why Jung blocked their way and asked them to line up in one line. Jung Seok regretfully said that he's not a cook. How can he spice up their food every time? The surprised girls told him that he was just running away and the guy just apologized and walked past them and approached Yoon-jae beckoning her. Yoon-jae turned to him a little embarrassed, and the guy took out a thermos and opened it, told her to try it. There were spicy rice cakes inside the thermos and the girl was surprised by them. And the guy said that the taste would change if they cooled down, so he brought them in a thermos. The girl said that he was not obliged and the guy said that yesterday she only helped, he was not well so he cooked it. Seeing this, the other girls screamed, saying that Yoon-jae was at Jung Seok's house and they thought she was quiet. Jung, seeing this as an opportunity, said that he could spice up their food with them, and the girls looked at him and thought about replacing him, but when they saw him, they immediately shouted at him to shut up. Jung Seok asked Yoon-jae to try a piece and the girl, still confused, tried it and her eyes sparkled. At another table sat three who were always in the same company with Suchol. That is, a black-haired, bespectacled girl, a chubby guy and a skinny guy with his hair up. The girl with glasses screamed that she knew that this bastard would make his move sooner or later. The skinny guy said that there was nothing unusual about it and they seemed to look good together. And the other said only that he wanted to try his spicy rice cakes. The bespectacled woman screamed at him, telling him to just keep eating his food. The skinny guy looked around, curiously asked if they knew where Suchol had gone, and the bespectacled one turned around and said that Suchol didn't want to see all this, so he didn't come. The chubby one asked curiously if Suchol had given up on Yoon-jae, and the skinny guy, smiling, said that this could not be. They all knew Suchol. He couldn't stand it when someone took something that belonged to him. At that time, the director and the calligraphy teacher were sitting in the principal's office. The teacher, putting the canvas on the table, told the director to look at it. The director, curiously opening the canvas, asked what it was and finding there the calligraphy of Jung Seok, said in surprise that it was a masterpiece and that it was an outstanding calligraphy. The teacher asked if such an expert as the director sees this as an outstanding calligraphy. The director said that how can he call himself a professional if he only took a couple of calligraphy lessons from his grandfather. After looking more closely, the director said that it didn't look like printer ink and that it looked like it had been written recently. The principal asked if the teacher himself had written it about. The teacher regretfully said that it was not him, but his student from the ISO class. The surprised director asked the teacher if he was sure that it was a student and he replied that it was, and also that the student had drawn it with a simple brush. The director folded the calligraphy sheet and said that there was no reason not to meet a student with such outstanding calligraphy. Jung Seok himself was sitting in the ISO classroom right now and waiting for the teacher. The lesson was going to start soon, so he was impatient. And then the director and the calligraphy teacher came in. The guy hurriedly got up from his seat and made a bow greeting the director and the teacher. The director asked the guy with a smile that he was Lee Jung Seok and he replied that it was so. The director said that he had heard that the guy was a great calligrapher. The teacher, smiling at this time, added that the director saw the guy's work and highly appreciated him. Surprised, Jung Seok asked in perplexity with what kind of work and the teacher showed his calligraphy today. After that, the director asked him if he could show how he writes. The director asked the teacher if he had a pen and ink, and he said that he did and began to preparing, pouring it into a vessel for ink and wanted to grind it. But the director stopped him saying that for calligraphy, the one who writes should rub ink. Then the director turned to the guy and asked him if it was time for him to start. The guy took a black stone for rubbing the ink and began to rub it. With surprise and new sensations, he looked at the stone, thinking that the ink felt somehow new. They had art lessons before, so he knew how to rub ink, but it was the first time he felt that it was so natural. Maybe it's also because of the study experience. He felt his mind become calm and even as he rubbed the coarse ink into a soft goo. This did not escape the keen eye of the director and he was surprised by such a level of concentration of the guy. The director remembered that as a child his grandfather had told him that writing calligraphy meant putting his feelings and emotions into it. It all starts with rubbing the ink. He must make sure that while rubbing the ink, he also invests his emotions. The director learned calligraphy from his grandfather, who took first place during the Joseon Dynasty state exams. Therefore, the director was proud that he had a deep knowledge of the art of calligraphy, but in order for him to become a master, he needed a master. At this time, Jung Seok finished rubbing and asked what to write to him and the director told him to write a phrase that the guy likes. The guy wondered if he should write a phrase from the diary of the Wang family. Since he remembered one of the phrases that was there, he decided to write it. The director calculated what was written. Understanding by ear, you can earn the trust of another by listening to him. Then he took the guy's sheet and began his analysis. The handwriting itself is bold and rich. At the same time there were notes of elegance in it, plus free strokes, saying that it was fine. The director even compared this work with the work of Wang Moonjang. Hearing Wang Moonjang's name, the guy tilted his head, but before he could think, the director asked him who he studied with and the guy said that he studied by reading books. This greatly surprised the director and he asked again if the guy had never taken lessons from a teacher or other adults. And the guy nodded. The director looked at the sheet with satisfaction and said that it is very difficult to learn such a level of calligraphy only by yourself. It is very commendable. Then he handed over the money, saying that it was a payment for calligraphy. Surprised and a little scared, the guy said that no, he didn't need it. But the director began to insist, saying that this money was not from the teacher, but from someone who appreciates calligraphy and wants to thank his creator for such a masterpiece. Bowing, the guy accepted the money and thanked the director. The director smilingly said that it would be great if they continued to write calligraphy in the future. The bell rang and therefore the director told him that he could go. Because it looks like the lesson will start soon, the guy bowed 90 degrees and said yes and left. Reading the phrase, the director said that it was a great phrase. The teacher asked what it meant and the principal said that it meant that one could earn the trust of another by listening carefully to him. When a person does not impose his judgments on another, he can listen and understand topics, ideas that a person likes, and on the basis of this continue the conversation or something else. After giving his smartphone to teacher O, the director asked him to take a picture of it together with the calligraphy, while he should focus the camera on the calligraphy, not on him. The teacher took a picture and apologized, left, saying that he also had a lesson. The director wrote in his chat to his friends that he wanted to share this beautiful work that he had recently received and sent a message along with a photo of calligraphy. And he looked again at the phrase written in it, thinking that the more he looks at it, the more it fascinates him. No sooner had he put the smartphone back in his pocket than it began to vibrate, and when he entered the chat, he saw how others were writing to him. One wrote that calligraphy has an amazing handwriting, and the second that this phrase is magnificent and very deep. The third asked the director where he got it from and also asked why there was no signature, because by this signature you can find out who wrote calligraphy. The fourth wrote that he would like to admire this calligraphy in person, so he asked everyone to get together. The director smiled, thinking that it looks like his friends are more interested than him. At this time, Jung Seok, who was returning to class, was thinking about the name Wang Mujang, which he heard from the principal. Maybe Wang Moonkyang is the person who wrote the diary of the Wang family. Or maybe the author of the diary copied Wang Moonjang's handwriting. And is Wang Moonjang known to be as famous as Han Soon-bal? While asking these questions in his mind, Jung Seok began to scour the internet for information. Wikipedia said that he was a politician of the Cheng dynasty and a great calligrapher, and his strokes and handwriting are concise and elegant. There wasn't much information, and Jung Seok thought it was because he was Chinese. Jung Seok decided to write a new query in the search engine and therefore wrote about the cost of Wang Moonkyang's works. Nothing was found on his request. Tilting his head, the guy decided to find out about the cost of Han Sung-bong's work and this time was shocked by the amount he saw. The cost of the book with the works of Han Sung-bong in total was $7 million. The next day, his parents saw him off, wishing him good luck and good grades for exams. The guy, smiling, thanked them and left. Surprisingly, this is the first time when he was waiting for the exams to begin. What kind of assessment does he get? And so in the classroom, everyone was focused on the tests. After receiving his piece of paper, Jung Seok went through the tasks once and smiled because he had confidence that he could cope with everything. Mentally asking his mother to wait a little, because he would make her a nice gift, he began to do the test. The exam was over and everyone was very happy about it, shouting about it in the corridors. But some whined that tomorrow they would have to take exams again. And someone more optimistic said that there would be no lessons. Jung Seok walked past these people with his hands in his pockets, and at that moment Yoon Jae appeared beside him and called him, asked how he wrote the exams. The guy, smiling, said that he thinks it turned out well. A cheerful voice rang out from behind, saying that probably Jung Seok was looking through the test paper until his eyes burst, and another voice laughingly added that it was a pity, because the answers he had been staring at for so long were probably wrong. Turning around, Jung Seok and Yoon Jae saw Sukol and his sixers in the form of a fat man and a skinny guy. The skinny guy, smiling all over his mouth, said that after all, the one who gets the best grade has already been determined. After all, it will be Mr. Best Student Kim Sukol. Sukol just looked at him indifferently, and the skinny guy continued, saying that Yoon Jae would be the second, but Jung Seok, as always, would be somewhere in the middle of the list with average scores. The fat man standing on the other side of Sukol laughed and said that this is an immutable law. Sukol called Yoon Jae with a smile, but she turned around and took Jung Seok by the hand and told him to go. The same one looked back in surprise, and then went forward. Of course, this scene made Suchol very angry. After leaving school, they were walking along the road when Yoon Jae asked the guy if they could go to the library together. They could study together for tomorrow's exams. The guy regretfully asked for forgiveness, saying that he would be preparing at home, and then the girl sadly tossed her head, but then embarrassed asked the guy if they could take a walk after the exams. Jung Seok of course agreed, and the girl, delighted, turned to him and told him to swear. The violent reaction of her friend surprised the guy, but Yoon Jae, without even suspecting it, said goodbye to him, saying that they would see each other tomorrow, and left. In the staff room, which was typical, just like in any other Korean school. That is, the office was divided into places blocked by walls indicating the place of each teacher. Each place had 2 workstations equipped with tables and chairs, as well as a laptop. In one of these places, a teacher with glasses and a light beard was sitting at one of the desks and making some notes on one sheet. While he was studying, another teacher came up to him with a smile on his face and called him, saying Teacher Choi. The teacher turned around and said that he was listening to the math teacher, and he smiled and said that one of his students had received the highest grade in mathematics. The teacher smilingly said that it was probably Kim Sukol, because he is the best student in the class and always gets the highest grade. So this is not surprising. But another teacher said it wasn't him, and Teacher Choi, surprised, turned to the math teacher and asked, "Then who is it?" The math teacher smilingly said that this time it wasn't Suchol who got the highest grade, but the next day in one of the school classrooms, where there were 3 writing boards, one large in the center and 2 others on either side of it, as well as a TV suspended from the ceiling on the left. There were students in the classroom, and their homeroom teacher appeared there, saying that today he would be the examiner. Young, surprised by this, asked that shouldn't subject teachers be the examiners at the exams, so why is it cool today? Teacher Choi sighed and told them to just accept it. Then he said about the rules. Cheating is prohibited. If students are caught, their work will not be counted. Jung Seok looked at the exam sheet, thinking that English should be first today. After looking at the questions, he was sure that he could solve them, and therefore immediately bent down and began to do them. The teacher, passing between the desks, slowed down next to Jung Seok and checked his test sheet. Third, first, fifth. Teacher Choi asked for answers from the English teacher in advance and learned them before coming here. So far all of Jung Seok's answers were correct, but it shocked Teacher Choi. And now the exams are over again and the student rating has been hung up. And in this ranking, the first place was taken by Lee Jong-seok with 100 points in all subjects. The runner-up was Kim Soo-kal with 2 100 seconds, 2 98 seconds and 199 and a total score of 99. Kim Hana was third with a total score of 97.5 and Nam Sang-dul was fourth with a total score of 92. Of course, this surprised everyone. Of course, it was surprising that Jung Seok became the first, but everyone was more surprised that Soo-kal became the second. Soo-chol himself looked at it with barely restrained anger, but his henchman looked at it with shock. Jung hugged his friend saying that he knew that Jung Seok could, because Jung had spent so much effort on his training. Immediately, voices were heard saying that Jung Woo was a jerk. How could he teach Jung Seok if he took 5th place from the end of the list? Jung Seok also congratulated Yoon Jae. Smiling, she said that it looks like Jung Seok studied hard. Jung Seok was smiling at her as someone pushed the girl away and appeared in front of Jung Seok. It was Kim So-woo, the school's main bully. His head was shaved off like an army, and his look was villainous. Seo-woo himself was a little fit and pumped up, but now he was looking at Jung Seok with an angry face, saying that he cheated. Kim So-woo, looking at the guy angrily, told him that Jung Seok thinks he can be the best student of the school, or what? Approaching and poking him with his finger, Seo-woo told him that he had cheated. He ordered Jung Seok to tell him how he had done so that Seo-woo could also pull this off. Shaking off Woo's hand, Jung Seok, with a frowning face, said that there was no secret or method here, and then told him to take his hand away. This angered the bully even more, and with a distorted face, he grinned and asked what Jung Seok had just hit him. And then he shouted that this kid seems to be does he think that once in the first place, then everything is allowed to him? Immediately there was a hubbub of people. One said that it looked like a fight was about to start, and the other asked if no one could stop them. Chubby said that don't they know Seo-woo's character? If someone interferes he will get two. Someone else said that if this continues, maybe Jung Seok won't be able to walk home on his own. Yoon Jae looked at Jung Seok with concern, and at that time Seo-woo grabbed him by the shirt and shouted that he was asking in a good way, while preparing a blow. At this time, Yoon Jae screamed loudly, but Seo-woo, sending his fist, was surprised to notice that Jung Seok dodged. Jung Seok slipped behind Seo-woo and hit him on the spine. Crouching with Woo did not believe in it, as well as others. Soo-kal was especially surprised. Seo-woo, holding his side, could barely stand, but Jung Seok, standing straight up, said that he had not cheated. Seo-woo called him a little bastard in a rage and went at him with his fist at the ready. Jung Seok easily dodged and using inertia hit Seo-woo's leg, which caused him to collapse to the ground and hit his head and lost consciousness. After such a show, of course, the hubbub of people began. One said in disbelief that Jung Seok really defeated this tyrant Kim So-woo, and the other said that it turns out that he defeated the judo captain was not an accident. Yoon Jae, not believing it, grabbed her mouth with her palm. Jung Seok approached the already awakened So-woo and told him that he had never cheated. Seo-woo, on the other hand, was looking at this guy, trembling all over and with fear in his eyes. Jung Seok decided to leave and Jung told them to wait for him and also left with him. Soo-kal, looking at this scene in shock, thought about what was going on with this jerk. Looking at the sky, Jung Seok thought about whether he should have answered a couple of questions wrong. He looked at his friend and asked him, does he also think that Jung Seok cheated? Jung said that he didn't say anything, and it's not that important. Now there is something more important than that. Jung Seok, not understanding, tilted his head and Jung grabbed him by the neck and shouted that he could help a friend cheat like that, but instead passed everything perfectly and left his friend behind. When he came home, Jung Seok saw that the restaurant was already closed and, not believing it, went up to the house. When he came in, he said that he was at home and immediately his mother attacked him, shouting that he was her wonderful son. Hugging him, she said that she found out that he got the first place in the rating of the whole school and started kissing him on the cheeks. The surprised guy asked how they knew and the woman said that his homeroom teacher called them. He said that Jung Seok got the first place and asked his mother and father to cook some delicious food for his son. Surprised by this, the guy asked that it was definitely his homeroom teacher and the father smilingly said yes, and it looks like the teacher was very proud of Jung Seok. Jung Seok asked looking at his parents that they didn't doubt him. The father asked why they should, and the guy said maybe he was cheating or something. The father, smiling, said to his son that he also went to school and he is sure that it is impossible to take the first place by cheating alone. Besides, the guy's father, smiling, said that he trusted him. Jung Seok smiled back and said it was a simple and clear answer. Mom screamed that in honor of this, They would go today and eat whatever was delicious, and father said that let it be pork ribs. It was the first time in a long time that they got out somewhere to eat. The guy's expectations were high, but the food, to put it mildly, was not delicious. Because of the super taste, the pork ribs he loved were tasteless. However, Jung Seok couldn't complain since his parents liked the dinner. It was a simple eatery with a meat roasting stove in the center of the table. Besides, the atmosphere of the place was pleasant. Also, Jung Seok learned something new today. A person could eat food only for the sake of his taste, but who you eat it with is much more important than taste. Soon after the exams, the holidays began, and this moment was awkward for the guy, because now it will be his first date. To do this, he got up early in the morning, went to the shower and began to wash at the same time, thinking what he should do. He also noticed that he was washing for too long, washing his hair for the third time. Then he remembered Yoon Jae's face, and decided that even though it was strange, it wouldn't hurt him. Then he went on a date. First there was an amusement park where they had a good time. After that they went to lunch, where they had a good chat, and then went to the cinema, where they were embarrassed eating popcorn and cola, and then evening came and they visited a simple eatery. After tasting the lemon juice, the girl said that she seemed to be missing something. By the way, she was wearing an orange, cute striped jumper and a black skirt today. The guy himself was wearing a green jacket and also black trousers. Jung Seok stretched out his hand and said, Yoon Jae, give him the juice, he will try to improve the taste a little. The girl smiled and said that she did not mean juice. Surprised, Jung Seok asked then what she meant. The girl smilingly said that they did not hold hands today and it upset her a little. The guy was very embarrassed because of this and even blushed. And so they were walking under the pink cherry petals, and the girl made an attempt to touch the palm of the guy and he did not push away and took it in response. Turning to the girl, their eyes met and they both blushed. At that moment, it seemed to Jung Seok that the grasshoppers were chirping louder than usual. In a green area where grass grew and trees were more beautiful, the girl stood on her toes and reached out to the guy. The guy hugged her from behind and their lips met. Jung Seok started to open his eyes and was shocked to see that he was kissing a pillow. Standing up in shock, he shouted why he had such dreams, because they only held hands. He looked at his smartphone, which seemed to have received a message. At the school at the principal's office, Jung Seok knocked on the brown door and was told to come in from inside. Entering, he bowed and greeted. By the way, right now Jung Seok was wearing a blue t-shirt and black jeans. Jung Seok said that even though it's the holidays, but the principal is still coming to school. The director, who was sitting in his chair in a shirt, told him to sit down, and then pointed to the wall where the calligraphy was, saying that these were his works and he wanted Jung Seok to appreciate him. Jung Seok looked at them and said he thought they were great. The director asked the guy if he was busy now, and the guy asked curiously, what, did something happen? The director said that there would be a meeting of the MUNBA and WU Literary Circle later and he would be happy if Jung Seok would join them. Looking at the smiling director, Jung Seok asked without understanding that he was sure. The director told the guy not to be scared. All the participants there want to meet with him. Then the guy agreed, smiling awkwardly. Then Jung Seok looked up and asked if director Wang Moon-jae knew. The director got up and going to the shelves, asked that the guy was interested in them because he said that their handwriting is similar. Going to the shelf with books, the director took one of them and said that Wang Moon-jae was a famous scholar in Chang. He had short phrases, but at the same time they are elegant and beautiful. Handing the book to the guy, he added that this book contains several of his works. Taking the book, the guy noticed that it was a very old book and told the director about it. The director said that there are books that have recently been released, but when you read his works like this, they seem more significant. The guy looked at the title and the old man said that this was undoubtedly How to Iron Out Wang Moon-jae's handwriting. Then he added that the guy took it and read it. Jung Seok thanked him for that. The two of them went out into the corridor and Jung Seok asked if Wang Moon-jae was also known as Han Segbok. The director said that yes, of course, it was. Wang Moon-jae was one of the best among all the calligraphers in Chang. Then the guy asked how much his work might cost. The director looked at the guy and said that it was not good to evaluate the importance of work with money, but he thought that several million won. Then the guy asked if the book was written by Moon-jae himself. Then the director smiled and said that if it was something that Wang Moon-jae himself had written, then it would be worth about 1,000,000,000 won. It shocked the guy, but the director said that since he is not so famous here, it would cost so much, but in China, it would cost more. And so Jung Seok and the director were driving in his blue Audi. They stopped near a house that was made in the style of the Joseon times of Korea. The guy, seeing this splendor, asked if it was the director's house, but then grinned and said that with his current salary, this is impossible. This is a restaurant that they have chosen as a meeting place. When they went inside, they saw an alley with greenery, and Jung Seok, surprised, asked what this restaurant was. They were led in the right direction and so they went into the right room and the director said that it looks like he came last. Inside, 2 men were sitting next to the dining table on one side and 2 more on the other. One man was bald and wearing a white kimono, the other in an office suit with black hair. The third person sitting parallel to them was with a half-bald head and a blue kimono, and another middle-aged man in a yellow kimono and with longer blonde hair. The director smiled and said that this guy is the one he was talking about, Mr. Lee Jung Seok. When he heard Mr. Jung Seok thought to himself that he had aged a lot. Everyone got up from their seats and bowed to him, saying that they were pleased to meet him and thanked him for coming. Lee Jung Seok, surprised by this, immediately bowed 90 degrees greeting them. The director, smiling, told them not to strain so much. The one in the blue kimono smiled and said that how could they talk informally with such a wonderful calligrapher. The director turned to the guy with a smile, saying that he hadn't thought, and then added that he hoped that Master Lee Jung Seok would forgive him for being rude. The guy looking at this mess thought that if they continue like this, it will put pressure on him. Then the director pointed to the cookies, told him to eat it and wait a bit. The guy sat down and looked at the cookies in the center of the table and thought that they looked appetizing. Taking one, he decided that he needed to see what it tasted like, and to his surprise, it was very tasty. It was the first time the food seemed delicious to him after he got his super taste. The cookies were not too sweet and a little spicy, and the tea had a delicate taste, like the sweet aroma of flowers. The director suddenly hung up the calligraphy he had given him and almost spat out the tea. Why was she here? An old man in a blue kimono asked him if everything was fine with him, and Jung Seok said yes, everything was fine with him. At this time, a beautiful maid in the form of Joseon maids came inside. The color of the uniform was pink, and the skirts were burgundy. Jung Seok said that everything is fine. He can finish this tea. But the maid took the cup and said she would bring another glass of tea. Seeing her, the guy opened his mouth in embarrassment, thinking about how cute this girl was. Looking confusedly at the girl, the guy thought that she was cuter than many stars, and when she looked at him slightly opening her eyes, he immediately turned away blushing. At this time, the old men were discussing Jung Seok's calligraphy, saying that it looks much better than in the photo. One of them asked if he was referring to Wang Moonjing's calligraphy, and the director said that obviously the guy studied well. This surprised others. The guy himself sat awkwardly and looked at the calligraphy from here. The maid wished him a pleasant appetite and got up and left. The director asked the guy to write something and he agreed, because he already thought that coming here he would have to write. He asked what the director should write to him, and the director asked his colleagues if they had any suggestions. The one in the suit said that let it be loyalty and patriotism. The director, seeing this, smiled and said that the spirit of the salad had returned. Jung Seok started drawing. To repay your country with loyalty. It was said that General Yu Fei's mother, who was a commander and scholar in the Southern Song dynasty, wrote this on his back. Loyalty is as sharp as a sword, patriotism is as serene as a lake. Loyalty is the soul of a warrior, and patriotism is the heart of a scientist. Looking at this, the old people could not help but be surprised, saying that this is a beautiful calligraphy. The director said that she was suitable for such a soldier as a man in a suit. He asked Jung Seok if he had a signature, and Jung Seok said he didn't have one. Then, he pointed to the coal and told him to write his name there in Chinese. The director also said that it is the law to sign your work, and the guy wrote his name. The man in the suit happily took the paper and hung it next to the director's calligraphy, saying that he would feed them lunch. An old man in white asked if their lunch had not already been paid for. The director asked his colleagues if Mr. Lie's calligraphy was not beautiful, and everyone said they were pretty, no more. They were fascinated by his work. The one in the blue kimono handed the guy a business card saying that if Jung Seok is ill or he needs an examination, he can come to the hospital where this old man works. The business card said that this old man was the president of Seoul Hospital, Kim Jo-kal. The man in the suit also handed him a business card, and it was written there that this middle-aged man, advisor to the National Defense Institute, advisor to Kal Ya. The guy, turning the business card, thought about what these places were for, when he suddenly saw that it said Lieutenant General of the Second Class. Of course it surprised him. Then he took the business card of the old man in white and the man in yellow. One was a former minister of the Ministry of Culture and Sports. Awkwardly looking at the director, he thought that this man had pretty good connections. The director, smiling, told everyone that it was time to eat. They were already waiting. The maids all set the table with dishes. Looking at all these wonderful dishes, Jung Seok also realized one more thing. Taste is important, but you can't forget about the shape and aroma. The maid told him to eat and not be shy. There was a little bit of everything in the plates. It looked delicious, but there was very little. The maid smiled as if she guessed his thoughts and therefore said that they would bring food until he was full, so he could not worry and eat as much as he wanted. The guy nodded and asked, and lifted a piece of meat to his mouth. It was very tasty. Then he tried the beef and radish soup, which was very spicy and fragrant. And in the end, of course, the perilla leaves went, but they were not very pleased with the taste. Taking a napkin, he spat them out. The leaves had an unpleasant smell and taste. The maid apologized, took one of the plates with a leaf and went out to the kitchen. Yongsong's Pure Silver was a restaurant with a membership system, so there are not many customers here, and if a problem appears, it is immediately solved. The maid, going to the kitchen, found the cook there and said that the client from the chrysanthemum room spat out the leaves of the perilla while eating. The boss was surprised and therefore asked again if it was true, and the maid nodded. He tasted the leaves and asked if the customer liked the rest, and the maid said that the customer liked the rest, well, except for the perilla leaves.